Welcome to the Rose Show podcast.
Thank you for joining us today. I am so honored to be here with the Iron Man of chess, International Master Jay Bonin. Jay, you are one of the great legends of
I did more than that.
Oh, wow. Well, I want to hear all about it.
In 1997, I won not only the Marshall, Manhattan, and New York State Championship, I also won the Nassau and the Queens Championship. I did a Grand Slam of club championships all in the same year.
Oh, my gosh. That's amazing.
See, I don't think anyone else has done that.
No, I don't think so. You have many records, and that's why you're the Iron Man. We met, many years ago at the Marshall Chess Club in New York City, where we would spend many weekends together at Marshall while my kids would play and you played in the same weekend chess tournaments, from FIDE events to Marshall action.
Oh, I was everywhere. Yeah.
I know. And you're not only amazing, accomplished chess legend, but Jay, you're really a sweet, kind person who I'm so honored to call a friend. And
that's very nice of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean it. You're so sweet, but you're deadly on the chessboard. So,
we got to keep that separate,
Yeah, exactly.
I have a lot of friends, but when I play them, I'm out to beat them, even though they're my friends.
I know.
We got to still keep the competitive edge.
Of course. How are you doing today, Jay?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm, trying to keep my spirits up because, I've kind of had a bit of misfortune happen to me in the last year. I had to have a colostomy because I had a fistula that turned into sepsis. And if I didn't have this emergency colostomy, I was going to die. I was in a coma for over a week. Not everybody survives this operation I had, but I did. And I'm very happy to be alive, so I should put that in perspective.
Absolutely. We're so blessed and so grateful that you're here with us.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I'm glad to be in touch with my friends. I miss everybody because I haven't played a tournament game in a little over a year.
Well, you'll be back.
I hope so, and I really miss everybody. And I'm very grateful when people come to visit, and so I can stay in touch, because otherwise I'm on the phone looking at Facebook, and I'm on chess.com playing speed chess.
Wow! So Jay, tell us. I want to know, we all want to know how it all began. I'm so sorry to hear about your recent health issues, but I know you're going to fight through it and you're going to be strong again, because that's how you've lived your life, being the Iron Man. How did it all begin? Yep. When did you what drew you to the game of chess?
Well, it was weird, I was in 1970, I was in junior high school, and this is before the Fischer-Spassky match, and I noticed a couple of my classmates playing chess on a little wooden peg board, and that's what first got me into it. And it was weird. I challenged one of them to a game, but I didn't know how to play, and I made all wrong moves, and they told me what I was doing wrong. Eventually, what happened was I decided to buy a little Hasbro chess set at a toy store and teach myself how to play. Had the instructions, and I learned how to move the pieces. And that was the beginning, and from 1970 to 1972, I was just playing casually. I had no idea what was out there. But then in the summer of 1972, I was working as a camp counselor in Manhattan Beach Jewish Center in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn, and And I was taking a break. I was in the counselor's lounge room, and what was on the TV was Shelby Lyman analyzing the Fischer-Spassky match. And then that was the moment where I really got into it.
Awesome.
And, after that I started following it, and then I wanted to find out where to play. I mean, for a while I was playing with a neighbor up the block, a nice man who I called Mr. Jack. His name was Jack Frankfurt, and I used to play games with him, and I used to play games with other people on the block, a couple of friends. I used to even ride my bicycle all the way to Nostrand Avenue, and there was a nice old man named Alfie Denitz, and I used to play Skittles games with him. And this is before, I started venturing out to chess clubs. And, gradually I found out where I could play. One of the places was a place called the Chess and Checker Club of New York, better known as the Flea House. It was in Times Square. And I went there a few times and, played some Skittles games. And the fourth time there, I suffered a bad experience. I played one of the hustlers there. I really thought I was good, but this guy whooped my ass and took almost all my money. I had enough to get home after I paid the time, and I was really upset. And so I didn't want to go back there. I looked for another place to play. Eventually, I stumbled upon Charles Hidalgo's Chess House, which at the time was on 72nd Street between Columbus and Amsterdam Avenue. And I went there for a bit, and I got into playing speed chess. And I had no idea about tournaments and stuff. And then later down the line, I'm playing high school matches for my high school chess team. I went to a high school called James Madison in Brooklyn, and I was playing a match against Sheepshead Bay High School, and the guy I was playing was pretty good. His name was Paul Wurmbrand, and he happened to be a member of the Marshall Chess Club. And he told me about the club, and, so I really wanted to know more about it, and eventually I found out how to get there and stuff. And I went there one day with another high school buddy, and I rang the bell, and wouldn't you know it, the person who buzzed me in was Bruce Pandolfini. You've heard of Bruce Pandolfini, right?
Wow, Bruce Pandolfini.
Yeah, he was the first person I met. He buzzed me in. And, I joke about it with him. I said, gee, you didn't realize who you buzzed in, huh? So I, played some Skittles there. And the manager there at the time was an elderly gentleman named William Slater. Very nice man. He really made me feel at home. And that was huge, I mean, if there was somebody else who wasn't so hostile, I probably would have gotten discouraged, and who knows, maybe I wouldn't be playing. Or if I went to the Manhattan Chess Club.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you feel Marshall was very welcoming?
Yeah, they were very welcoming, and, I came in the afternoon, and at that time there were a lot of Skittles games going on. Tournaments weren't big back in 1972. It was all Skittles chess pretty much, although they did have a few tournaments. I mean, they had a weekly Blitz tournament, which I eventually played in. And I played also in their Thursday night tournament, but I didn't do that till December. When I joined the club in November 1972, I was playing Skittles.
Okay. Well, just for everyone, in case people aren't aware, please tell us what you mean by Skittles and what
Skittles
you mean by...
is, casual chess, non-tournament chess.
Mm-hmm.
I would play Blitz or I would play Bug House. And there was even a popular game called consultation chess where one person would play in one room, and then a bunch of people would consult in another room. So I took part in some of those, and let me tell you, the club was jumping. There was a lot of people there. I mean, this was a Fisher boom going on. When I joined the club, a lot of other people joined the club too. But it's funny, I didn't join the club till November of 1972, and the Fisher Spassky match was in the summer of 1972.
Mhm. Wow.
So.
Interesting. You're part of history. You're part of New York chess history.
Yeah, but how I found out about tournaments? I found out about a Scholastic tournament at the McAlpin Hotel that Bill Goichberg was running.
Another chess legend.
It was probably through my faculty advisor. I don't remember, or maybe it was Paul Wurmbrand himself. Somebody gave me a flyer on this tournament, and and I really wanted to do that, so I entered that tournament. I almost got into trouble by entering that tournament because it conflicted with a road test appointment that I had to take for driver's education. I was doing that at the same time, and there was a miscommunication, and I almost failed driver's ed because there was a miscommunication. I thought I was going to get that rescheduled, but when I talked to the driver's ed person, he was very angry and he wanted to fail me, and I explained the situation to him. I eventually got rescheduled for a road test, so talk about conflicts.
I know.
Yeah, so...
so your first tournament...
Anyway, my first tournament was the Greater New York High School Novice Championship, and it was over around Christmas time, I guess, close to it, and I tied for first in that tournament with 7 out of 8.
Wow.
So that was encouraging. I mean, who knows what would have happened if I didn't win the tournament. Maybe I would have gotten discouraged, but I tied for first, got my very first trophy.
And how old were you then?
I was 17.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
17, and you tied for your first tournament, and that's when you were probably encouraged to continue, and you loved the game.
Oh, yeah, that was very encouraging, so I started doing other tournaments. I did one at the Marshall. My very second tournament ever was a Marshall Thursday night classical tournament, which is still going on. You've probably seen it yourself. I mean, if you come on Thursday night, they had the action tournament upstairs, but the other tournament was downstairs, and that tournament's been going on forever. It's still going on. That very same tournament is still going on.
Oh, wow.
So talk about longevity.
Right, I know. And so you started playing, that was your first tournament, and now...
Well, the first tournament was the Scholastic tournament. The Marshall tournament was my second tournament.
Yeah. And then that was it? Did you just start playing chess all the time, full time?
Well, I mean, what happened was I was, there were some huge gaps before tournaments. I mean, I was playing at the Hotel McAlpin. Bill Goichberg ran tournaments there like every couple of weeks. So a couple of times a month I was going to these tournaments, and, I think I continued to play at the Marshall as well. But back in the 70s, there wasn't much activity. So, I was doing those Goichberg tournaments, and
so you were full-time chess from then?
No, I mean, I didn't really get to be a maniac until around 1980. That was the year that Bill Goichberg opened up the Chess Center of New York. It was on 6th Avenue and 14th Street. And, he took over for a backgammon club that used to be there called the Bar Point, and I have to confess I was also playing backgammon from 1977 to 1981. I was kind of into backgammon, and that was a bad vice, and I kind of dropped a bit of money doing that, I was not a very good gambler.
Oh, so it was gambling with that.
I gambled. It was some setbacks. I gambled at backgammon. I later gambled at horses, and then. Well, actually, I did horses first, and it's kind of funny how I got into it. My late father took me to Monticello Raceway when he had a home in Kiamisha Lake, a little summer home, and he took me to the track one day, and I got hooked. But then when he kind of caught me doing it, and I was reading the racing form and stuff, he suddenly lectured me on the evils of gambling, and it's like, well, that's hypocritical because you took me to the track.
Yeah.
And, I lost a bit of money playing horses, and later, around 2007, I got into poker as well. I was doing Texas Hold'em, and, I didn't do well in that, and 2012 was a bad year because I had to file for bankruptcy. So there are some dark chapters in the Iron Man's life, and
and we're going to talk about them. Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because you know what, the Iron Man, Jay Bonin, International Master Jay Bonin, is an amazing, accomplished chess player. And I have to say, I'm going to just say a few things. An international master is a minimum FIDE rating of 2,400.
Yeah, now it is.
Yeah.
But back in my day, you didn't need that higher rating. Back when I made the title in 1985, there was no rating requirement, and I think you had to play in 2 Swisses and 1 round robin at the time.
Oh.
I don't know all the details now, but I know you have to have a minimum rating, and I feel sorry for players like Justin Sarker because he should have been a Grandmaster, but he never made it to 2,500, so he's still trying to get his rating up to 2,500.
He hasn't done it yet?
I'm not sure. I haven't really been following him. I hope he does, because he made 3 norms, and he might have even made 4 norms. But
I think he's made 5, I think. I mean, he made a lot.
Whatever, but I don't know if his rating is up to 2,500, so.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's very tight. Yeah. So you're basically, to me, you're like a Grandmaster.
I've beaten many Grandmasters. It's kind of funny. A lot of people said I should have been a Grandmaster, but because I've beaten so many Grandmasters, and but I'm not because I didn't make the norms. I came close in one international tournament back in the early 90s at the Manhattan Chess Club. I came in 3rd in a round robin behind, I think Gregory Kaidanov won the tournament, and Nick DeFermian was 2nd, and I was 3rd, and I needed to beat Nick DeFermian, and I would have made my first GM norm, but I came up a half a point short because I could only make a draw with him. I remember beating a late Grandmaster named Lembit Ol. He was an Estonian. I won a game against him. He's no longer with us, though. I think he committed suicide.
Oh.
I don't. Something wasn't right with him, and so I remember he was one Grandmaster Scalp, and that was a good tournament for me. But I came up short. That was all the way back in the early '90s.
Your memory is just amazing. You're like a walking historical almanac. I mean, you just know your dates, you know your games.
Well, I don't know all my dates. I don't remember the exact month. I don't remember all the players in the tournament, but
very important. Most people can't remember what they had for breakfast, okay? And
let me tell you, sometimes I forget what I ate in a given day. It's really weird. They feed me 3 meals a day in this nursing home, and sometimes I can't remember what I ate.
I guess
it's scary.
It's not as important. That's why.
I hope I'm not coming down with dementia, because people with dementia can remember things from a long, long time ago, but they can't even remember what they said 5 minutes ago.
Oh.
And
well, hopefully I doubt it. Your mind is very sharp, and every time we talk, I think you're just as sharp as many years ago when we met. So
I try to stay sharp. I'm always playing. I chat with people to stay in touch with people. I talk to my brother Robbie a lot. He's a wonderful brother, and I have another brother, Donald. They're
Nice.
both out in Ohio.
Are you the youngest in your family? Or
No, I'm the oldest.
You're
Donald's
the
the middle one, and Robbie's the youngest.
Oh.
Robbie is 61. I'm going to be 68 in July.
Oh.
Donald's going to be 64 next month. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. So 3 boys, just like my sons.
So we're all, yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
Three boys. Yeah.
Exactly. So you became
we sort of have a link.
Yeah, absolutely. We have many links. So you became an IM in 1985.
Yes.
And your peak USCF rating, I read, was 25-26.
That was, I think, my highest ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually, amazingly, I had a high FIDE rating at one time. It was in a futurity that Bill Goitzberg ran back in 1976, it was 77. It was early 1977 at the Manhattan Chess Club. He ran twin futurities, and that was my first experience in an international event where you could get a FIDE rating, and I did well in that. I scored 5 out of 9. And the field I played was very strong, so I started out with a very high FIDE rating of 24-25. But I never really came close, and I even dropped a lot of points because, like I said, I had a bad habit gambling at backgammon, and I think for a bit it compromised my chess game. And over time, my rating went all the way down to like low 2200. I think I almost lost my FIDE rating, and that would have been a big body blow. But somehow I stayed above, and and I'm trying to claw back. I don't even know if I'm 2300. I might be high 2200s right now. I haven't been keeping track of my FIDE rating. So
yeah, well,
I never really worry about my rating. I just play. There are a lot of players out there that worry about their rating, and that was not me. I just played, and I never worried whether I'd lose points here or there. And,
that's what makes you so special in the Ironman.
Whatever I lose, I gain some back because I played so often that, losing the game wasn't so bad. And, I would just try to forget about it and turn the page. But I've suffered some heart-wrenching losses.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that soon.
Yeah.
We're going to be going into the mindset section and talk about the bad losses and the best games you've had. You're known as a dangerous, practical player. And like you said,
yep.
Yeah, you've beat more GMs than many titled players have even played.
Yeah, I probably could brag that I have more GM scalps than any of my other fellow IMs out there. I mean, I could be wrong, but... So
it's no surprise you're called the Iron Man. You've been playing.
I try. Yeah.
I think you probably played more games than anyone else. I mean, I think
I have the record, but you know what's sad? Not everything is accounted for because they've been keeping computerized records since 1991. So if you go into my rating history, you could actually see how many games I played since 1991. But prior to 1991. Things were not computerized, so you could only take a guess. I mean,
probably a lot more.
Yeah, but the tournaments that Bill Goitzberg ran at the Chess Center, those were not recorded.
Yeah, well,
you could only piece together and guess how many games I played in that span from say 1980 to 1984. That's really where it all began for me.
Wow. Yeah, well, you've won countless tournaments. You've competed for about 5 decades, I believe.
Yeah.
Right? And,
you're pretty much,
really, yeah. You're probably the best known active American international master. Definitely.
You want to award me the title. That's very nice.
Yeah. I'm going to give you you're like
well, maybe posthumously I'll get the title.
Yeah, I'm going to.
I've had many chances to get the GM title, and I always fell short. But somewhere along the way, I would be the GM here, I would be the GM there, and You know, I've had stretches where I've beaten several GMs in one tournament, you know.
Yeah, well, I'll honorary award you international Grandmaster title.
Okay.
So, yeah, absolutely.
I accept. Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us about there's a certain night that's named after you. It's called the Bonin night.
Yeah, I think I created that myself.
What's that all about?
Well, they're usually dominating. They're nice and central squares, and you know, if I get a nasty knight fork that wins material, I guess I could call it a Bonin knight, and I kind of joke that they're called Bonin knights because if you're not careful, they'll bone you. Get it? Bonin knights. Yeah. So that has like a double meaning, you know. But yeah, I you know, as for the moniker Iron Man, it's weird. I really don't remember who first anointed me Iron Man, but somehow in the last few number of years, that's my moniker.
How long have you been called the Iron Man?
I really don't know. You probably could have been, you know, since the middle 90s. I mean, back in 1995, there was an article written about me in the New York Times. It was October 6, 1995, and I actually made the front page of the Metro section. And that article was written because there was some interest because there was a match going on between Kasparov and Anand at the World Trade Center at that time. And, you know, so there was some interest, and I was the subject of a human interest story because even back then I was active, and so that was the first real exposure I got in a, you know, major publication like that.
So
I've actually had another one in the Times written in 2012, but that was more of a cry for help, and ironically, you know, that did get me some help. So
what kind of cry for help? What kind of cry for help was it?
Because, you know, that's when I was starting to go broke, and you know,
okay.
and eventually someone helped me. You know, nice guy named Brian Hulse. He helped get me a bankruptcy lawyer who happened to be a chess player as well. Someone I knew from the Marshall Chess Club back in the 70s. His name was Nick Fitzgerald, and he helped me do my bankruptcy. Oh, you've heard of Nick Fitzgerald?
Yeah, I have.
You've actually heard of him?
I think so, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he did my bankruptcy, and you know, with the help of Brian Hulse. Thank you very much, Brian, if you're listening to this. You know, they helped me get through a difficult time. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think that the chess community comes together, and they help each other out, and you know,
they did. I'm very grateful. Very grateful.
Yeah. Well, you're very much loved by everyone. You're respected and you're loved. You know, and you know, you're very important part of the chess community. You know, you're called the Iron Man. You have the Bonin Knights. And can I ask you, are the Knights your favorite piece on the board?
They are. Yes, they are.
Wow. Yeah. And they're very complicated. A lot of people have trouble with Knights, and that's a very complicated move.
You know, I would always play to get both Knights. I would try to keep the position closed because Knights work well in, you know, closed or semi-closed positions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't want to open the board up too much because then theoretically the bishops are better. But you know, so I would have a strategy that I would try to follow. I would have a set of patterns I would try to follow, and if you have a pattern, you know, if you have a plan that you want to stick to, it's also easy to find moves, and for that reason, I managed my time well, and you know, didn't get into time pressure too much because I tried to stick with a plan. You know, it's just easier to find moves when you know what your plan is and you try to stick with it. But of course, you're not always going to get what you want. You have to be adaptable. You have to be ready to switch gears because, you know, like I said, you're not always going to get what you want.
I love that. That's so true across all fields. So this relates to everything. You don't always get what you want. You got to
you got to be ready to adapt to change.
Exactly.
You know.
Keep an open mind. Be flexible.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, sometimes I would try to get into one of my favorite openings, but I wouldn't always get it because I wouldn't get a favorable move order. So, for example, you know, if I want to play a Bononi defense, I would, you know, delay it, you know, till white plays knight f3. If white plays knight c3, then I'm not going to play the Bononi. I'm going to play the Nimzo Indian, you know, things like that.
Very flexible. You go into the
because the Bononi doesn't work as well against knight c3 as it does against knight f3. So it's like you always got to be ready for that.
I love it.
You know, if you don't get plan A, then you have plan B, and you know, you just got to be ready for that. And, you know.
And speaking of flexibility, you seem to play almost all the openings. Are there any?
Yeah, I try. I wasn't always doing that. Back in the early '80s, I was very limited in my opening repertoire. You know, I was playing a lot of Bononis, a lot of Frenches, and a lot of Bishop G5s, but I was just doing that too much. And, you know, finally I got a little more flexible, you know, started adding the Sicilian, you know, and...
How about D4, E4? Do you play any favorite? I think you're more of D4, right?
I'm more of a D4 player, but I played E4. You know, in the beginning, I was playing E4 a lot because I was inspired by Bobby Fischer, because Bobby Fischer was an E4 player. So back in the early days, in the 70s, I was more of an E4 player.
Oh.
But, you know, and I would play slashing attacks like the Velimirovich attack and the Kerry's attack, where you run up your kingside pawns very fast. And, you know, I was playing sharp, but now I've kind of switched gears. I don't do that so much. If I play E4 and I get a Sicilian, I'm more positional. I'll play Bishop B5 or Bishop B5 check and, you know, try to keep the game more positional.
Wow.
So.
Okay. So what are your favorites? What are some favorite openings for white and for black that you love to play?
Well, as white, when I'm D4, when I play D4 and my opponent plays the King's Indian, I'll trade pawns on E5, I'll trade queens on D8, and then Bishop G5, and I guess they call that the exchange variation.
Yes.
And I would get into a queenless middle game, and I would do that against a lot of youngsters because, from my experience, youngsters don't like to play the end game, or they don't know how to play, or, you know, or a queenless middle game. You know, suddenly they can't attack me.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, recently I've been trying to, you know, play the classical line more and the exchange variation less. But you know, I mean, eventually I'll switch back. I mean, part of the problem is I play online and I can't see my opponent, and I don't know how young or old that opponent is. So
you see the psychology with chess, which we're going to talk about, you know, understanding your opponent and playing a certain way for your opponent. And that's a fascinating part of the mental side of chess. And we're going to get into that. So as black, what are your favorite? Are you loving the Sicilian? Or are you still preferring the other one?
Yes, the Sicilian seems to be my number one opening. And I would play an offbeat line. I would do knight c6, and if d4, I would take on d4 and play an early e5. They call that the Kalishnikov variation. It's not quite a Sveshnikov variation because in the Sveshnikov, black plays an early knight f6, allowing bishop g5. But I don't allow that. I delay knight f6 for a while, so I preempt bishop g5, and, you know, I keep white guessing.
Very nice. So you keep them in suspense. So,
and the game is more of a positional game. You know, white has to suddenly try to exploit my weak d5 square, which is more of a positional theme, and it's harder to just, you know, throw a kingside pawn storm. because, they got to watch out for things like, B5 break on the queen side, things like that.
So do you like taking the knights away from your opponents, or do you just prefer?
Yeah, I actually do. I would try to trade off my bishops, but sometimes I do that a little too much, and it doesn't always work out well, and
Yeah. So what are your favorite time frames with the games? Do you like the shorter games? Remember those 10-minute martial action games?
Yeah, I like game 30. I like game 45, but I'm flexible. I played all time controls. I played the slowpoke time control of 40 moves in 2 hours or 2.5 hours, whatever. I've done that. I've done everything from blitz. I try to avoid bullet because that's too fast. Although one time I got into a bullet game on chess.com, but it was with a 2-second increment, so it wasn't really a real bullet game. It was 1 minute with a 2-second increment.
Yeah. Yeah, the 2-second increment adds.
Yeah, that kind of slows it down, so that really doesn't make it a real bullet game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be able to handle a straight 1-minute game. I'd probably have a heart attack if I tried.
That is very, very fast. So
yeah, I played 3-minute, and now I do 5-minute or 3-2. I think I do. Yeah, I think I've been doing 5-minute now.
Yeah, we're gonna segue to blitz chess, and I was gonna ask you your favorite type of blitz, and I guess 5 minutes is preferred over bullet.
Yeah, I mean I've done 3-minute, but it's a little too fast, I think, and
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're fully aware, but there's a certain decision-making process that occurs in those fast games called expertise.
Yeah, well, it's more like instinct, and you definitely have to have a pattern in blitz. Because you got to make a certain number of moves in a certain amount of time. So it's important to have a pattern. Sometimes I'll blitz out and, but sometimes, I should have deviated because something will show up different. But, I try to stick to the pattern because you want to save time later on. You don't want to get into time pressure. But, that's one of the pitfalls of blitz. You really got to pay attention. But in blitz, it's more instinct,
Absolutely.
Especially in bullet. In bullet, it's pretty much all instinct. As one of my fellow IMs, Mark Ginsburg, would say, move, press, move, press. That was his mantra. And he's right, You really can't think,
You don't think. I know. It's a very fast.
It's move, press. But, I don't always practice what is being preached,
Yeah, it's subconscious, quick decision-making based on pattern recognition. It's actually called, expertise-based, intuitive decision-making. You basically just feel it. It's not even that you're thinking, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And sometimes I kick myself because I'll get into an ending, but I'll lose on time because I guess it's really not practical for me to go for an ending every time because and a lot of times I would fall on time because I would have a winning position, or even a drawn position, but I would have material on the board, so I would get flagged. People are evil. They just flag me. I mean, I've gotten flagged in dead drawn bishop of opposite color positions because I couldn't capture the last pawn because it's on the opposite color of my bishop, and I would just get flagged. People do these things, and I have to confess I've done it myself to get back at those evil people that do it against me, but, so.
So they've been some evil people along the way that have wanted to have
sometimes I get evil, but sometimes I'm a sport. I mean, if it's a ridiculously drawn position, I would make a draw even though I could flag my opponent.
I've seen that. Even though you have a drawn position, people try to flag you. Yeah,
it's evil, but that's part of the game, so. But it's not an important game. It's not a tournament, so what the hell do I care? You want to flag me, fine. I'll play the next game and get some rating points back. I mean, I got all day, I mean, in a nursing home, there isn't much to do. although today was productive. I mean, I had a little physical therapy, so
Yeah. Well, you're getting better. That's the most important.
I'm trying.
thing.
I'm trying to keep my legs limber. And
I remember you used to always walk a lot. We used to always see you walking everywhere.
Yeah, and now I'm kind of compromised. I don't walk as much as I used to, but I try to walk. I mean, earlier the therapist had me doing some exercises with the legs, trying to move sideways and going over cones without banging into them, things like that. Things for my coordination. And
well, it's good practice. You need that therapy. So,
yeah.
Jay, what is your favorite part of the game? The beginning, the opening, the middle, where all the battles take place, or the end?
Well, I sort of like the end game. I try to steer for end games. I like queenless middle games. I try to go for those whenever I can. Because when you get the queens off, you're less likely to be checkmated. Whatever attack comes about is usually spearheaded by the queen. So you get the queens off the board, suddenly, the attack isn't going to be as successful, in my opinion. But,
Yeah, it makes sense. So you like the queenless middle game. Noted. Yeah. Next time anyone plays,
that's right.
Noted.
So Paris. Well, I'm sure Paris knows my style, and your other kids. They played me. They played me a million times.
A lot of times, and they love.
I last saw Paris at the New York State Championship in 2021, right before I got stricken the first time.
And he won the Blitz. He's the youngest to ever win the New York State
Blitz. He's really making leaps and strides, and he got so tall. I bet all your kids are tall now.
Yeah.
I haven't seen your kids in years. I bet Sebastian's tall.
Yes, he is. Yeah. He's 13 now.
Now he's 13. Oh, my God. Everybody's a teenager.
I know, right?
Oh, my God, how time flies.
Yeah, we were playing him. I think 5 years old he was with you. We were all hanging out together. It was at the Marshall.
Maybe he was 7. Yeah, he was very inquisitive.
Yeah. Remember he would play with you in the back room at Marshall, the Skittles room?
Yeah, and when he wasn't doing that, he was looking at informants. So
yeah, you remember that. He would read all the informants.
Oh, yes, I remember. Yeah, I remember.
I love it. Yeah, that was it. He loved hanging out with you. You guys would talk, and he would play. It was a lot of fun. Well, we'll have to do that again. You recover.
Well, one of these days.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I want to talk to you about chess psychology. That is very important, the mental game of chess. Now, you were mentioning it before. You do size up your opponent depending on who they are?
Yeah, I mean, when you play somebody enough times, you sort of get to know what they like to do, and I would try to play around that. I would try to not give them what they like, So,
yeah.
If you frustrate your opponent by not giving them what they want, that could be a key to winning a game too, because then they have to be dealt with something else, and maybe they won't adapt. I mentioned earlier you got to adapt, but not everybody adapts. They don't get what they want, and I guess they get a little hissy, and they're in a bad frame of mind, and they'll make a mistake, and I'll win like that.
So, do you think of any opponent that you played? I know you played Michael Rose. You played, what's his name, Durabek. You played all these people so many times.
Oh, yeah, and, I've gotten beaten up by Durabek, Kamrakulov a lot, and, but even so, I would try to modify what openings I would play. Trying to think.
What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, against this Carol Can, I mean, I would try to play Queen F3, and he seemed to have a problem with that, and let's see, against, I played D4 against him a number of times, and he would, he liked to go into the Spinoni type setup, and he seemed to know that pretty well.
How did he beat you? Was it usually in the end game?
Well, usually in an ending, you know, and he always outplayed me, and you know, I would try to get the knights against him. Usually, I have knights against bishops, and he would just outplay me, and yeah, he was a very hard player to beat. I think I beat him only once, and that was in a blitz tournament, and I've made a number of draws against him.
I just remember you always talking about him. When I'd see you, you always say how you would. He was a tough challenger for you. Was there anyone that you would enjoy playing? Do you have favorite opponents that you enjoy playing?
Yeah, I mean, trying to think. Well, I used to love to play Wesley Hellner, the late Wesley Hellner.
Oh, I remember. He was such a sweet man.
Yeah, he was a nice guy, but he was very predictable. So I would play Larson's opening against him a lot because he would always give himself double pawns. He was a true pattern player, and he never would always change up. So I would always get a favorable Larson because I would, I would give him double pawns on the queen side. I would plunk a knight on e5, and I would storm his king side, and he would let me do that a lot.
Wow. Yeah. I remember Larson's attack. Sebastian played that. The Larson's attack was fun.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I win a lot of games like that, so I enjoyed playing him. And
yeah. How about Boris Privman? I think he passed away too, right?
Yeah, he's been gone a couple of years. I like playing him, even though he was a tough game, because we sort of had similar styles. We both liked endings, but
I received the highest compliment from him. Sebastian did. Boris Privman told me that Sebastian had the best end game of anyone under 18, like any child. He said, I've never seen a child play an end game like Sebastian. So that was a really nice compliment. He was a nice man, Boris. What a big loss to the chess community.
Yeah.
And you played Michael Rode quite a bit too, right?
Yeah, I played Michael Rode a lot. I played him, I think, between 400 and 500 times.
Wow.
On the span going back to
what kind of record do you have?
1974. Oh, he's ahead of me. He's ahead of me, but my later record improved. I mean, in the beginning, he was beating me a lot because, because he was much better than me as a junior. But then I started narrowing the gap, and I started beating him a bunch of games and drawing a bunch of games. And ironically, my last game at the Marshall Chess Club was against Michael Rudd, and hard-fought draw. He was a half a point behind me. I was 3-0, and he had 2.5. I didn't realize that he gave up a draw, and he was.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah. I want to ask you about your attitude across the board. I have to say, you and I both know that there are some players out there who don't have the best attitude at the board. But you've always been very classy, and
I try to be. Yeah. Although I've gotten upset a couple of times. I've had some tough losses.
Have you gotten angry at the board?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I mean, I would vent. I mean, one opponent did something that I thought was very unsportsmanlike. I won't name him, but that put me in a bad mood, and I kind of complained to the tournament director. But that loss kind of put me in a bad mood.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Some people do that. But
I've suffered some other tough losses. I mean, a long time ago against a young Max DeLugi, I lost a game where I was like, I think I had a piece. And I decided to simplify into an ending, but I did it the wrong way. And in the end, my extra piece was a knight on the rim, and he had an extra pawn, so he ended up winning the piece back and then going on to win the king and pawn ending. So that loss kind of didn't settle well with me.
Oh, yeah. Max DeLugi's a very strong player, GM Max DeLugi.
Yeah, and I was having one of my rare good moments against him. This was at the Chess Center, I think, a long time ago. So
what games stand out to you, like bad losses? What games, when you think of bad losses, what's a game that comes to mind?
Well, I've had a few of them. I mean, one was against Hans Niemann in a martial championship when he was a little boy, and I was better, and I made a lot of mistakes to lose that game. I even declined, I think, a draw offer, and I went on to lose the game, and that was a very costly loss, and I think it cost me a prize, so that one stood out. And another one was against a very young Brewington Hardaway, who actually took lessons with me for a while. That was the ironic thing. He beat me when he was like 7 years old, and nobody really knew about this, but I'll come out with it. And that was a tough loss because I don't lose to too many youngsters. But this one was really tough because he was so young. But I got over it and moved on. And then a couple of years later, we met up again at one of these charity chess events, and the mother, who's very sweet, told me he wanted to take lessons with me. I was like shocked because it's like it's like wow, I think he's beaten me a couple of times. He's a very talented youngster.
Yes, he
is. In fact, he won a Scholastic event in Saratoga.
Oh, he did? He went up there.
Yeah, and he made a couple IM norms too.
Wow.
So he's really moving right along.
Very strong, very diligent, very determined, and he's.
So I feel honored to have worked with him for like a year, and
he's a hard worker. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very talented.
Absolutely.
And
a great family. I know them quite well, and very good people, and I'm so happy for them. So that's great. So you taught him as well. So that's I guess that loss turned into a win in the end. He became your student. So
it was weird. Yeah, it was kind of flattering in a way because it's like gee, I'm surprised he would consider, but he, we worked together for like a year.
Well, no surprise. You're a great teacher as well.
And he always bought my book too. He loved my book, and I think he learned a lot from it. Because he likes to play the end game too. So
the end game is a very calculating and unforgiving part of the game.
Yeah.
So you had emotions during games. Like I'm sure during the game, I know you're so experienced, you've been playing forever, but I'm sure you get emotions during the game, right? You get that feeling. How do you control your reaction from those emotions so you don't lose the game?
Yeah, well, it's not easy. Try to keep a poker face, I guess. If I make a blunder, I try not to flinch too much. I don't want to give it away.
It's like you're playing poker, yeah.
Yeah, but it's weird. I, really wasn't a good poker player.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your mindset because I know. Yeah, well, let me tell you, Jay. I know from being in chess, my kids playing so many games for many years, that losses come and losses happen quite often, and there are a lot of bad losses. Like you just spoke about, you had some bad losses. My kids have had plenty, but it's about learning from those losses and coming back stronger, picking yourself up and coming back. The next game, the next day. How do you do that? How do you have that fortitude? Have you always had that?
Yeah, well, being an active player, it's, there's so many tournaments, you just move on to the next one. Other players don't have that luxury, they're in isolated places. There aren't tournaments every day. I mean, I was lucky. I mean, I was able to play every day because I could. There was a lot of opportunities.
Wow. So you just went on to the next one. You didn't
on to the next tournament and just try to forget about it, And
did you learn from your mistakes? Like, do you learn? Do you focus? A lot of people study their games. Have you still continued studying your
believe
games?
it or not, I do learn from my losses, and especially if I like a certain opening that my opponent played against me, sometimes I'll do it myself. I'll copy that person and try to incorporate it into my repertoire.
Very nice. So you take a win from that loss. You turn that
Yeah,
loss.
I'll try to learn how my opponent beat me and then try to use that to beat my opponents. And in fact, I suffered one loss against a Grandmaster Gelashvili, and he played a nice little trick in the Slav defense, where he swung his queen over to h3, and he had a double threat, a threat on c8 with Jack, and a threat on knight takes g6 to force me to take with the f pawn, because I couldn't take with the h pawn because the rook on h8 would be hanging, and that would give me a crippled position. And I remember he beat me. I was so impressed with that trap that I started doing that myself and winning a lot of games with that very trap. So yes, you can learn from your losses by noting how your opponent beat you, and then try to play like that to beat somebody else.
Very nice. Now,
so the Queen B3 variation of the Slav is Exhibit A. There's a number of games like that in my book, Active Pieces. So,
very nice. Now, this isn't Georgi Kachishvili. This is Galashvili?
Yeah, Gelashvili. Thomas Gelashvili.
Oh, I know. I think he's the Georgian. He's
also Georgian. Man. Anybody whose name ends in Vili is usually Georgian.
Have you played? Yeah, have you played Georgi Kachishvili?
Oh yeah, quite a number of times.
How's your record against him?
I think I'm behind, but I think I've won one or two games and made a bunch of draws, but
very nice.
I think overall he's ahead of me. I mean,
but still,
I got good records against some Grandmasters.
Yes.
I've beaten Roman Ginchiashvili 6 times. I've beaten Dmitry Gurovich 6 times. I've beaten Michael Rode more times, but of course we played.
Alexander Lenderman?
I have some wins against him. A lot of wins came when he was younger, including a win in Foxwoods back in 2007 when he was a teenager. But he's gotten much better since then. And
how about Fabiano Caruana?
Well, same here. I mean, I actually have a good record against Fabiano, but most of the games I played him was when he was a little boy. I mean, the last game I played him was when he was a teenager and he was visiting New York. And this is funny. I ran into him and his father on West 10th Street. I thought they were coming from the Marshall Chess Club, and I was getting off a Fifth Avenue bus to go to the Marshall Chess Club. So I told them that I was going to the club for a tournament, and I assumed that they were coming from the club. But you know what happened after that? They did an about-face, and they followed me into the club. And it was a quad that Steve Emmett was running, because Steve used to have these evening quads for evening open quads on the weekends where he would run under 2300 tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on my way to one of those, and so Fabiano turned around and he followed me into the club, and he entered that tournament. And he won all 3 games, beat me pretty convincingly, and this is back in like 2007 or 2008. I mean, he was already on the improve. So
yeah, wow, you've played some really very famous chess legends. I mean, did you played Josh Waitzkin as well? He was another famous chess player. You played him when he was younger, I think?
Yeah, I played him back in the early 90s. And
you know Bruce Pandolfini.
Well, I never played Bruce. Bruce is a teacher.
Yeah.
Bruce trained Josh, and he also trained Fabiano. So there's a link there.
Absolutely. And there's that movie,
Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Searching for Bobby Fischer, exactly.
You know, I tried out for a part in that movie.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, Bruce recommended me for a small part, but I got rejected, and eventually Cameron Shirazi took over that part because he was better looking than I was. I guess looks mean a lot in the movies, you know.
Oh, which part was that? Do you know?
It was a small part, you know, playing a hustler in Washington Square Park.
Ah, okay,
Whatever.
that scene, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they even mislabeled him. They called him a Grandmaster, but Shirazi wasn't a Grandmaster. He was an international master, but he was pretty dangerous. That player gave me fits. He was a fighter. He was a true romantic. He always played to win.
What's a romantic in chess?
A player who attacks a lot. That was the old style, like Paul Morphy.
Really?
Paul Morphy was a romantic. I mean, back in the day, players were swashbuckling, and they would try to win by attacks, and, you know, sacrificing pieces and stuff, and, you know.
That's a romantic. That's so cool. I just learned that today. This is amazing. I feel like I'm walking through chess history with you.
Yeah, that's definitely not my style.
No. Who are some
there's
other...
classical chess, and there's hyper-modern chess.
Yeah. What would you consider yourself?
Well, I'm definitely the latter too, you know, hyper-modern. You know, one of my first books was by Nimzovich on, ironically, it was the praxis of my system, whereas I should have read My System first. But My System's a very good book, but the praxis of My System were a selection of games. I kind of bought his game collection not knowing that there was the other book. You know, eventually I found that out, but one of my early books, you know, taking up the game was Nimzovich's Praxis of My System, you know, and he would like show things like the blockade, you know, and I guess there was a thing called the Sword of Damocles where you keep threats hanging over your opponent's head, you know, until they finally fall. I guess that's what the Sword of Damocles was. You know, it's up there threatening to fall, and you don't know when it's going to fall.
Wow. Do you do that?
Yeah, and, you know, he had another thing called alternation where you try to create threats on both sides of the board, you know, keep them guessing. That was Nimzovich.
Who's your favorite chess player? Who's a mentor to you in the chess community, in the chess world, living or dead? Like who?
Well, I think that would have to be Asa Hoffman, who's still living. He recently turned 80, and he was an inspiration to me because I loved his style. He played a lot of offbeat openings, and to keep his opponent guessing, and as he would say, and he inspired me a lot. I learned the check Benoni, you know, because he would play it to beat me. That's another thing. I would take up the check Benoni because Asa beat me a number of times, and I was so impressed with it that I took it up myself. So that's homage to him. And I would play other Asa openings, you know, even, you know, I've done D6 and C6 and Bishop G4, and, you know, I would do that. And
how would you... What would you classify Asa? What type of player is Asa? He's amazing at blitz.
Yes, he is. He's very tricky, but he, you know, I would consider him more positional, you know.
Positional, wow.
Yeah. He likes to play Bishop G5 a lot, and if you're not careful, he'll give you double pawns, and, you know. So,
we don't want double pawns.
Yeah, he would play the Trompowsky a lot. I wasn't necessarily a Trompowsky player, but he would also play Bishop G5 against D4, D5, and I've done that too. So
yeah, Paris is a Trompowsky player. He likes it. He has a lot of success with it. He loves that.
So I'm sure Asa inspired him as well.
Yeah, Asa is amazing, and we're going to get into your book. There's a book called Iron Man.
Pieces. Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an offbeat book. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to talk, before we get into Active Pieces, which is your book, and it's on Amazon, and we're going to talk about that. I want to talk about Iron Man versus Gladiator, which I believe was about a 2015 Blitz match that you played against Asa Hoffman. Is that right?
Yes, it was. And it was a nice collection of games, a very rare collection of games. And I feel guilty because I only put one Asa game in my active pieces book. So this Blitz match kind of like sort of made up for it.
And so he's called the Gladiator, is that right?
Yes, he is known as the Gladiator.
Did you give him
he
that
wrote
name?
a book called Chess Gladiator, that was published by Yasser Sarouan. That was his very first book.
Oh, I love Yasser.
And he also published a book recently called The Last Gamesman. I didn't mention that earlier, but I'll mention it now. Very good book by Asa, The Last Gamesman. It's not a collection of games, but it's a biography.
Very nice.
About his life, and I could sort of relate to him because I was sort of a free spirit myself. So
yeah. Now his wife is so sweet too, isn't she?
Jenny's a real sweetheart.
She's so nice.
She's doing wonderful things for me.
So the Iron Man versus the Gladiator, the ultimate chess battle of legends.
Yeah,
so
and what's funny? The games are on YouTube. If you Google it, I don't know why, but you could actually watch the games on YouTube.
Wow, I'll link that in the description.
Kind of made it weird why there was a book, but there is a book, and the annotations are by some top-level grandmasters like Larry Christensen, and I think Alex Lindemann might have annotated, and other top players. So it was kind of flattering to have those games annotated. I don't know if the book is still available. I mean, you could ask David Yamtobian. There's a website, chesslessons.com. I don't know if that's still around. And, I really don't know if the book is still out there. It wasn't,
I remember
big selling
seeing the
book. But it was a nice novelty.
I have the book. I have
you have it?
Yeah, I have it. I remember buying it from many years ago. I bought it from, I don't know where it was, somewhere.
Yeah,
Maybe
it was at the Nassau Chess Club, and I think David brought some over.
That's it. I probably got it there. So is there a chess player that's not living, like one of the greats, like Morphy or Capablanca, any of these people that are like mentors to you that you have a similar style?
I use Capablanca.
Yeah. And do you follow in Capablanca's style?
I try. I try to, some of his end games are very instructive, especially king and pawn endings. And that's another ending I like. I like king and pawn endings, in addition to knight and pawn endings, or good knight versus bad bishop. I'll try to get into a king and pawn ending.
Very nice. Wow, so that's great. So now we're going to go to your book with Greg Keener called Active Pieces, Practical Advice from America's Most Relentless Tournament Player. I assume that's you, right?
I guess so, yeah. And I was inspired by the fact that Greg Keener, my co-author, he co-authored the Czech Benoni book with Asa Hoffman. And I think that's what really helped me make my decision to work with him, because he's credible, Although years before that, the late Larry Tamarkin wanted to write a book, but that never materialized. And unfortunately, Larry's no longer with us. May he rest in peace. But he had an idea for a Bonin book, but just never materialized.
So a lot of these great games that we've spoken about and other games are all in active pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I have some games against Grandmasters, but I also have games against, the average club player, and that's why some people like my book. You go to Amazon, you look at the reviews, you see all kinds of favorable reviews, and one of them was that, that it's liked because, it's pretty much against everybody.
That's great.
players that people could relate to as well, so they feel a connection.
Yeah, it's about connection. So it's on Amazon, Amazon.com.
Yeah, and you could also get it through Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble, you know, you go to a brick-and-mortar Barnes & Noble, and they're likely to have my book there. It seems to be a popular destination.
Okay. Well, that's great. So active pieces and practical advice from America's most relentless tournament player, available
at Barnes get it from Amazon, yep.
And Amazon. That's great.
Yeah.
So
go there.
I know that you have an impeccable memory, like I said before, and you remember the dates, you remember your games. So could you share with us some of your best wins? What are some games that you can think of that come to mind as something you're proud of yourself? Like, what a great game.
Well, I got a few standout games. One was against Stefan Duric in the 1986 World Open. That was probably my best game, my best combination. I sacrifice a couple of pieces. I throw in a quiet move in between, and the finish was pretty. Rook sacrifice that couldn't be accepted either way because of mates, or just a win of material. In the end, I won Duric's queen. So I love that game.
And then he resigned after that?
Yeah. And I played a game against Tatiana Weiserberg. It was a Dutch defense. And in that game, I sacrificed my queen only to promote it back with an advanced pass pawn. So that game kind of stands out as one of my better competitive games. Yeah.
Very nice. Wow. So these are some really memorable games. How about tournaments? I know you won those.
Well, the most memorable tournament was the 1986 New York Open, because I went on a tear in the beginning and everybody was raving that I was going to win the New York Open. I started out with 4 out of 5. I beat like 2 GMs and a strong IM. I started out beating Lev Albert, Florin Georgiou, and Boris Kogan. And then I made draws with Nick DeFermian and Grandmaster Yehuda Grunfeld. So I was 4 out of 5 against those Grandmasters. But then I ran into a little bit of a bad stretch where I lost 3 games in a row to 2 Icelandic Grandmasters, John Arneson and Helgi Olafsson. And the third Grandmaster who beat me was Andras Adorian from Hungary. And then I finished up with a win against the late Robert Byrne. Robert Byrne was a world champion candidate. And he's no longer with us. But I've actually beaten Robert Byrne twice. So that kind of stood out. But, you know. But the wins in that tournament were cute, too. I mean, the Georgiou game featured a little combination to win the queen, and the game against Albert was positional. I played a different move order to avoid his Benko gambit. You know, I played D4 and knight F3 rather than C4. So when he offered a Benko gambit, you know, it wasn't a true Benko gambit.
Oh, yeah, the Benko gambit.
Yeah, I kind of got to play an early bishop G5, and I took off his knight. Yeah, it was one of those games where my knight killed him, you know. So that kind of stood out, you know. You might say that was a Bonin night, because I ended up sacrificing it for a mate. So.
Wow, I really feel like we walked down chess memory lane together this afternoon. This has been amazing, and I'm so grateful that we got to spend some time together, even though it wasn't in person. We were on the phone together. And my takeaway from this is never give up. And that's really what you did. You never gave up. You learned from your losses. You just keep going, right?
Just got to keep moving on. You know.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful, Jay.
Yeah.
Active
I didn't
pieces.
mention some other ones.
Tell us.
Reshevsky.
Ooh.
On my birthday, my very first Grandmaster scalp on my birthday, my 27th birthday back in 1982, and that was a game I'll remember. So, gotta mention that. Yeah. So.
That's amazing. If you can think of anything else, leave us with one more. What's another amazing game or tournament that is something that you hold dear to yourself, something that inspires you?
I had a stretch in the New York Masters tournaments back in the early 2000s where I think I had a stretch where I beat several Grandmasters in a row, spanning 2 tournaments. I think my victims in those tournaments were Yudashin and Strapunski and Shabalov. I think it was Shabalov, although Shabalov ended up ending my streak. And I think also Gadakamsky, this was like when he was just coming back from the game. Gadakamsky took a little break, but in 2004 he started playing again. And so that was a memorable stretch for me. It was a couple of those tournaments. I don't remember exactly what month, but it was in 2004. And people talk about that even. So,
I remember hanging out with you at Marshall and then going to New York State and all the tournaments. And I was always, for me, I'm just telling you my personal feeling. Whenever I'd see you at a tournament, I would be so happy because it's like you're warm and fuzzy. You're so sweet. You're such a great person. I used to love buying you coffee. Remember I used to get you coffee sometimes?
Yeah, I miss those days.
Yeah, I miss them. And tell everyone, Jay, how can people find you and stay in touch with you? Your book is awesome, Active Pieces, but how can they play with you, play chess with you, or stay in touch with you?
I'm on chess.com. I'm known as Bonin Knights.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Bonin Knights.
Yeah.
And okay, perfect. So chess.com, do you play on ICC Chess?
No, I haven't played on ICC in a while. Because and I don't have the software on my phone here. And I stopped playing on them because it's very hard to get a game, especially late at night.
Yeah. So chess.com.
Chess.com is the best place to reach me.
Perfect. So chess.com, Bonin Knights. And thank you so much, Jay. I love talking to you. Thank you for sharing all your memories with us and all these great things about you. And it's been a true honor speaking with you. Thank you.
Okay, Roseanne. It was my pleasure. And I hope to see you soon, and I hope everyone who listened to this will benefit from this. Some life lessons. Stay strong, everybody. We'll try to do the same.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.